Thank you to Brad for that kind introduction, and thank you to the Milken Institute. I have said no repeatedly to testifying on Capitol Hill, partly as a function of where I live. It's hard to get there, but I would never say no to the Milken Institute. I'm not sure I can compete with Larry King, but the topic of my talk today may have some relevance in the eyes of this audience. We'll see. So as we meet here today, the dollar is very much in the news, and not all the news is good. If you read your Financial Times this morning, you will have seen that the headline was once again about currency wars and about the fear in emerging markets in particular, but more generally, that the second round of quantitative easing in which the Fed is engaged at the moment is, in fact, an attempt to debase or devalue the dollar. There is the specter of trillion-dollar budget deficits in the United States, as far as the eye can see, that creates the fear in some circles that the Fed will eventually feel pressured to inflate away the federal debt. Gold prices continue to scale new heights, as you know, signaling, how should I put it politely, that there is less than full confidence in the dollar. I don't entirely want to play dismal scientist. The bright side of the story, from the point of view of the United States, is that other currencies like the euro have even more serious problems. The dollar has the exorbitant privilege that it's not only our currency, but the world's. So Brad asked me to mention where this phrase comes from. It comes from France, the phrase exorbitant privilege. If my French was better, I would give it to you in the original. But it's a phrase associated with Charles de Gaulle in the 1960s, originated by his finance minister. And it referred to the fact that life is unfair. International monetary life, in particular, is unfair by virtue of the fact that it is the dollar. And it wasn't then the French franc, and it's not now the euro. That is not only one economy's currency, but the world's. So that's what my book and my talk this afternoon are about. It's about the extraordinary extent to which the dollar dominates international transactions and what it will mean for the United States if and when this is no longer the case. So let me give you a few numbers. Economists work with numbers. I won't give you too many. But the Bank for International Settlements, the central bank's bank in Basel, Switzerland, takes a survey of foreign exchange markets every 3 years. Last Thursday, it released the results of its most recent triannual survey, and which showed that the dollar is currently used in 85% of all foreign exchange transactions worldwide. So you have to understand that this is a market in which the total is not 100% because there are two currencies involved in every trade. The total is 200%. But still, the fact that the dollar is involved in almost half of all those currency transactions is quite remarkable. When exporter in Korea needs to get his or her hands on Thai baht, they first sell Korean won to buy dollars, and then they buy baht because the dollar is the go-to currency through which everybody goes in the foreign exchange market. The dollar still accounts for 61% of the foreign currency reserves of central banks and governments worldwide. When they hold foreign assets, what do they hold? They hold U.S. treasuries. Countries like South Korea and Thailand, there are those two countries again, set the prices of more than 80% of their export trade in dollars. despite the fact that they only ship 20% of their exports to the United States. When Somali pirates ransom a ship, they demand that the ransom money be parachuted to them in dollars. When Iran gives President Karzai's people bags full of money, the money in question, so far as we can tell, is in dollars. Actually, this fact, while it's convenient for Americans, it's convenient for us to be able to travel abroad and pay our taxi driver in greenbacks, it's not entirely an unmixed blessing. Since foreigners want dollars in order to finance their international transactions, they want to accumulate dollars as a form of insurance in the event that something bad happens on global financial markets. They're willing to lend to us Americans in order to acquire those dollars. If we are prone to excesses, for example, if we Americans engage in frenzied real estate speculation, they then willingly give us more rope by purchasing not only U.S. Treasury securities, but the securities of Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. Now, of course, after the financial crisis, we've learned the error of our ways. We Americans are now saving more. That is a fact. With Americans now saving more, spending less, we need a weaker dollar in order to export more. A larger share of what we produce has to be sold to foreigners. Now that American households are saving 7 or 8% of their incomes rather than 0. We need to make our exports more attractive to foreigners, and one way we can do that is by adjusting the price. That's the argument for why now, in the wake of the financial crisis, we in the United States need a weaker dollar. But we find it difficult to obtain one because other countries want to continue pegging their currencies to the dollar. That's the currency war problem of which the Brazilian finance minister was complaining in this morning's paper. So from America's point of view, this means that the dollar's exorbitant privilege. It's the currency everybody uses. It's the currency to which other countries peg their own monies. This is a burden as well as a blessing for the United States. How did we get into this situation? The dollar became the world's currency. It came to dominate international financial markets in the aftermath of World War II, when the United States was basically the only economy standing. So there was the Soviet Union, there was the Soviet bloc. They were cut off from financial transactions with the West, pretty much. The United States was the dominant industrial power after World War II. We accounted for half of global industrial production. We were the single largest exporter. We had far and away the largest and most liquid financial markets in the world. So all of this made it logical. Indeed, it made it attractive for companies and governments and central banks around the world to do their international transactions in dollars. In the last half century, you will know other economies have begun to catch up with the United States. First, war-torn Europe and Japan reconstructed their economies. Then there was the emergence of emerging markets. We now live in a more multipolar economic world, but we still have a dollar-dominated monetary and financial system. There has been no commensurate decline in the relative position of the dollar globally to match what has been a relative decline in the economic weight of the United States globally. Why is that? The traditional answer to the question why the dollar still rules the international domain is the advantages of incumbency. The argument is that incumbency is an advantage in holding on to international currency status, just like it is for a politician seeking re-election. For importers and exporters, for example, don't want to confuse their customers. If they have a competitive product, they want to price it in the same currency that other importers and exporters are pricing their products, so that it's easy to compare those prices and avoid confusing one's customers. And since everyone else is quoting prices in dollars, it similarly makes sense for you to continue doing so. So with everyone else buying, selling, and holding dollars, it pays for you to continue to buy, sell, and hold dollars. And moreover, that means that markets in dollar-denominated assets will be more liquid than other financial markets. So economists have a name for this situation. They refer to this kind of situation where what it's in your interest to do depends on what all your neighbors are doing, as a situation characterized by network externalities, where it pays to adopt the same standard, the dollar standard in this case, as everyone else. And it's pretty easy to understand, I think, how it is that situations characterized by network externalities are also characterized by high levels of persistence. Once everybody has gravitated to a particular standard and it becomes widely adopted, it tends to get locked in. That's the traditional answer to why the dollar continues to dominate. I now want to suggest that this is no longer likely to be correct. The notion that importers, exporters, bond underwriters, and others who do international business all want to use the same unit as other importers, exporters, and bond underwriters in order to avoid confusing their customers holds less weight in a world where everybody carries in their pocket a device called a smartphone that can be used to compare currency values in real time. So once upon a time, not too long ago, it was beyond the capacity of all but the most sophisticated traders to do those kind of comparisons, certainly in real time. Now, Currency Converter is one of the 10 most downloaded apps at the Apple iStore. So it may have been true once upon a time that the costs of switching from using one currency for international transactions to using another one were high, but this is no longer the case. The same is true of personal computing. Once upon a time, it was said there was room for only one operating system for personal computers because of the high switching and interchangeability costs, unless you were a computer hobbyist and you had no interest in actually exchanging data with people you worked with. You had no choice but to use Windows. Network externalities were too pronounced to do otherwise, and now we know that's no longer true. Now we have Microsoft and Apple and Google and Linux all sharing the market for computer operating systems. So my argument is that sooner rather than later, this will be true also of international finance. Once upon a time, there was room in international markets for only one currency, the dollar. But now, because switching costs have fallen, there is room for several international currencies. We're heading, in other words, toward a world where the dollar will have to share its exorbitant privilege. It will no longer exclusively occupy the international stage. I want to suggest that this change will have implications for Americans. It will be felt in their pocketbooks, but on balance, this change is to be welcomed, not to be feared. Our multipolar world economy will be more stable and smoothly functioning with a complementary multipolar monetary and financial system. And I think a lot of our current economic and financial problems can be traced to the fact that we have an imbalance between the real economy, which is multipolar, and the monetary and financial system, which is still strangely dollar-dominated. So which currencies am I talking about specifically? I attach the highest probability by far to three: the dollar, the euro, and the Chinese renminbi. And I'm sure at this point many of you will object. You will object that one of these currencies is not ready for prime time, that it will not be viewed as a reliable